I want to introduce Kelly Bennett. She is the arts reporter for Voice of San Diego. Actually, she's multi-talented. She's a very, very accomplished violinist and plays in a group called Tree Ring. So, thank you. For those of you who are tapping your water glasses, I appreciate it. Kelly has instituted a program that she's going to tell you about in San Diego called Meeting of the Minds. And what it has done, it has provided a forum, a setting, to expose some of the most interesting things that are happening in the arts in San Diego. And I attended a Meeting of the Minds just about a month ago, I guess, and I was inspired to ask Kelly if she could pick a couple of the highlights and share them with us as a part of this forum. So, she agreed, and now I want to introduce Kelly Bennett.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having us. I'm from voiceofsandiego.org. That's a member-supported nonprofit news organization looking at all sorts of stuff about quality of life in San Diego, government, education, economics, innovation, the arts. And a couple of years ago, I took over the arts beat. I'd been covering housing market. And I quickly noticed that there were a lot of pockets, neighborhoods, niches, things that people were doing within the local arts community, but they didn't necessarily know each other. And this was something that I heard all the time. Theater people go to theater, and dance people go to dance, and visual arts people go to visual arts stuff. The museum people know what's happening at that museum and this museum, but they might not know about the new gallery that's opening in Barrio Logan or in San Isidro. And so we started using a really fun format called Pachacacha or Pechacucha. I've heard it pronounced both ways, which takes 20 slides, gives a presenter 20 seconds per slide to speak for just about 6.5 minutes about something interesting happening in local arts and culture. And we took 6 of these in a night. We've had 3 of these events so far, and each one has left a lot of people that I know feeling like they're excited to live in San Diego. There can be this sort of funny cloud that hangs in different cities all around the country, I think, about, what's our cultural identity? What do we really have here to be proud of? And in San Diego, what I was finding as an arts reporter was that there was lots. So why not bring these people together to actually talk about it? Hence, we called it a Meeting of the Minds. And so when David and I were speaking about how could this look, or what could we do with this format in a miniature version to kind of intersperse here, we came up with a couple of the presentations that we've featured in these 3 events that started last year. And our first speaker tonight, I'll be back tomorrow with another speaker, is Maurizio Zeracini. He directs the Center of Interdisciplinary Science for Art, Architecture, and Archaeology at UC San Diego's Cal IT2. All sorts of interdisciplinary approaches to looking at culture and the environment and energy and health. And in this case, Maurizio is going to be explaining to us a very brief look in this format at really his life's work, and I'm very excited to hear him speak. I will say that Maurizio has found an interdisciplinary way around that strict format that we were talking about, and I'm excited to hear the ways in which he can fill in even more of the gaps for us as he describes the work his team is doing to search for a missing Da Vinci mural in Florence, Italy. So welcome, Maurizio.
Good evening, and I'm honored to be here, fresh from Florence, and bringing some news about what we've been involved as University of California, San Diego School of Engineering in the symbol of the Renaissance in Italy, the Palazzo Vecchio, and specifically in the Hall of the 500, which the way you see it, I'm sure many of you have been there, and which is a marvelous place, is a symbol of the Renaissance, but at the same time, it still uncovers, or I should say, still hide a mystery about a lost Leonardo da Vinci mural, the Battle of Anghiari, which was painted somewhere here, long before the remodeling of Vasari, the architect, that man on the left corner there, that about 60 years after Leonardo worked, basically changed the whole architecture of this Great Hall, and from that moment on, this incredible and most important work of art by Leonardo da Vinci, called the School of the World, the highest form of art ever achieved in the Renaissance, and by the contemporary of Leonardo da Vinci considered the highest form of art that Leonardo has ever made, disappeared. So we have been involved for some time searching for this masterpiece. This is a copy by Rubens, later copy. Rubens never saw the real Battle of Anghiari, he was not born yet. But just to give you an idea what we are looking for, which is a part of this big mural that was supposed to be 3 times as big as the Last Supper. And this specifically is a fight. It's called the Fight for the Standard, which is related to a real battle fought and won by the army, the Florentine army, 1440 in the plains of Anghiari against the Milanese army. And this was really the highest form of art, as I mentioned before, and contemporaries from Raffaello, Botticelli, all they were enthusiastic in copying and inspired by this great masterpiece. Well, this search did not start yesterday. As a matter of fact, you might see a fellow there with black hair, which is actually me a long time ago, in the 70s, and still trying to find out something about this lost masterpiece. And when I was just fresh from graduation from the University of California, San Diego School of Engineering. That is back in 1977, so that tells you that I'm not exactly a fresh one, but nevertheless, there's still the energy and the will, the passion to go after mysteries like that, but especially to show how art and science can be blended together, as well as technology and science can also be very helpful to understand, to uncover, to preserve and conserve our cultural heritage. Well, one of the first things we found way up here was a flag with this inscription, just 2 words, cerca trova, search and you shall find. Well, it sounded like an invitation, or at least a clue. Maybe I was on the right spot after all. It turned out to be that that was actually was a motto of some of the soldiers which were fighting. This was called the Battaglia di Marciano in Val di Chiana, and they were trying to win over the Medici family to go back to Florence. But nevertheless, it turned out to be almost 37 years later that this flag and this inscription indeed just was placed right over where just most recently we found traces of the lost mural, sorry. We started with a 3D rendering. Now I'm jumping about roughly 20 years. And we, for the first time, a laser scanner was used, and I'm referring about 13 years ago, to have a 3D model of the entire hall, which was as our reference point to match and to place all the other data that we were going to have, especially multispectral imaging, as I'm going to show you in a second. This, for example, the lower image here is what is called a thermal image that shows behind the painted plaster, the murals, in other words, that you see on top, what was the structure of the wall. In other words, trying to understand all the changes, the layout, stones versus bricks, doors filled in, arches, and that really is like reading an original text. You see the evolution, the structural evolution of the monument. So that was very helpful, and we did that all over on every of the 4 walls in the whole of the 500. After that, we did a radar scanning, searching for an air gap. And we did find that air gap exactly on the same panel under the wall that was built by Vasari, on top of which then he placed his mural. And the reason why we're looking for an air gap is because Vasari, the architect that was commissioned by Medici about 60 years later to remodel the Hall of 500, tried and managed to save at least 2 very important masterpieces, murals, placing a wall in front of it and leaving a small air gap. So that's why we said, how can we find an air gap in between 2 walls, on top of which there's a mural without touching anything? So we just thought over and over, and that's why we are engineers somehow, and we managed to use a prototype antenna, radar antenna. We scanned both walls, and we did find, here you see this red line that indicates the void, a small air gap, actually a few centimeters air gap right in between the wall, the new wall set up by Vasari, and the original wall on top of which we were searching for the lost mural. Then we did also another radar mapping, this time showing the strong signals just after the first wall, over which you can see today the mural. And indeed, it was confirmed that in this area, there was an air gap just incidentally, just behind, underneath that flag Cerca Trova. And then we did other imaging of every single square meter of that hall. In other words, we managed to reconstruct the way the original Great Hall, Sala Grande, looked like, and therefore all the changes, structural changes that Vasari, the architect, introduced. Why? Because so we could define exactly the empty areas where Leonardo could have painted, free of windows or doors, or a ceiling that was later raised by almost 22 feet. And let's jump to just last November. Thanks to the Mayor of Florence, who supported us all the way, and with a team that you will see of young students, all PhD candidates in engineering for cultural heritage, this huge scaffold was set up. And in addition to search specifically and physically under the mural, we decided also to sort of put all these findings, visual findings together in an augmented reality application on a tablet. Never done before. I like to see your judgment as soon as you see what we have done. Sounds easy, it is easy, but it's never done before. And this could open up a whole new world of interaction of us, visitors, in museums, versus looking around a very important or simply monumental buildings, and how much we can discover, and we are the one who will make the discovery. Please. So all you have to do, just hold on the tablet, aim on the wall, and then just use your finger, and you wipe over the surface, and you see the structure of the wall underneath. That would be cool, right? It has a lot of applications. And actually it's been done. We are doing it. Now we are going to do it for paintings. So imagine you place yourself in front of a painting, and you are not satisfied with what you see, or you wonder if that's all that your eyes can see that is there to be seen. But where is the genesis? The layer after layer sequence. Well, we can do that. You just use the tablet, wipe off, and one layer after the time you see, as almost if you go back in time, how the work of art was created. The same we can do with a monument. Please. So just, that's one of the several adds-on, I should say, contributions in addition to searching for the lost mural. Keeping in mind that the search for the lost mural is like a testimonial to a much bigger picture, that is to use engineering sciences for cultural heritage, to develop not only technology and but also scientific methodologies, but most important of all, to train a new breed of scientists, engineers for cultural heritage. No other universities in the world so far is doing this. And so that also puts UCSD on the world map. Now, we were then asked to move forward and, well, to prove one way or the other if indeed there were remnants of this lost mural. We were asked to do endoscopy, even though we had a much bigger plan to use a non-destructive technology, neutron activation analysis, but I'm not going to talk to you about this, otherwise you might not digest everything. And so 7 tiny holes were drilled through, not through the painting, don't get me wrong, through areas where there was no paint, and this drilling was done by state restorers from the State Restoration Center in Florence. And once those drills and those tiny holes, about 6 millimeters holes, were done, up to 3 centimeters, 2 centimeters, then we just use a fiber endoscopy with a camera on top of it, and we managed to peer through the wall and see what was behind, and then manage with a sampler to take small fragments of what actually we uncovered. And those pieces, extremely small fragments, because through a 6 millimeter hole, you have to insert the camera, you have to put a sampler, you have to take the sample and bring it back home after about 15 inches path traveling back and forth. So everything becomes very shaky, so it was not easy to take all this out. Anyway, once they were out, we set up right on the scaffold a sort of a small or first step laboratory with stereo microscopy, X-ray fluorescence, Raman spectroscopy, and just to get a first idea what we had in our hands. Then later on, we film all this endoscopy, let's say, inspections, and we managed to prove that indeed there is an air gap, and that's what you see here. That's the original wall, that's the front wall, and in this case there is about 3 to 4 centimeters, let's say almost a little less than 2 inches wide air gap. So indeed, this air gap was built to protect, by Vasari, to protect the original painting, Leonardo painting, so that it would not be damaged. And these are some of the fragments of the tiny, we're talking about in the range of between 200 and 750 microns big, because unfortunately we could not take any bigger sample given the restraint of the small holes. So here you see a red fragment which inorganic based, but then the red is organic and very much it's associated to a red lake color. And as well as, I don't know, this picture really doesn't show you the story, but this is another area. As you see, it's about 6-7 centimeters long, let's say 3 to 4 inches long. And I don't know if you can see well, hardly. There are some black dots here and there. And they found out that that black is indeed a color that the composition of which and the ratio between two chemical elements, between manganese and iron, is actually very similar to what was found just recently in the same black color in the Mona Lisa at the Louvre. Well then, this is another sample of the background, let's call it a layout, that was placed and brushed over by, by Leonardo, and we just found some fragments here and there. Unfortunately, we talk only about fragments because, again, we could not choose the areas to be drilled through. As I said, even though there was an air gap, though it did not have a lot of continuity inside, so you could not move around really and guide the fiber through. And basically, that's we saw just small portions. But that was enough to say, first, We managed to reconstruct the way the Great Hall was at the time when Leonardo started to paint. Second, we understood where Leonardo did paint. And third, we proved that we were on the right point, on the right area, and we took off pigments, real pigments. We haven't seen the big picture yet because not through such a small areas. So we are waiting for the next and final step from the local authorities to come to conclusions. But meanwhile, we have sent some of these fragments to a center here you see in Grenoble, France. It's the European Synchrotron radiation facilities. In other words, there is this particle accelerator facility where you can really get the soul out of very small fragments. And we did some more sophisticated exams just to prove, and we are close to a publication, that indeed we did find pigments. And I guess, unfortunately, I'm at the last slide, but that gives you an idea that I was not alone. It was thanks to all these young people, together with my colleague, Professor Falco Kuster, who is also a UCSD professor from the School of Engineering, that we managed to create the first engineering team ever put together. Basically, almost all of them are PhD candidates for engineering to become engineers specialized in cultural heritage. It is my belief that this is a very needed field of expertise, but most of all, is one example how college education can be and should be interdisciplinary, since we're looking for Leonardo, as Leonardo was the Renaissance man, the universal man. So we are just trying to go back in time and really pick up from there, trying to show that there is a need for art and for technology, but also there is a need for this truly interdisciplinary education, science-based. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maurizio. I love that summation comment. So we're just trying to go back in time. But at the same time, they're trying to go forward in time, and that's what's so exciting about this. I just wanted to thank Maurizio Saracini again from the center. Well, here's how you should look it up. If you're taking notes, to Google later. CISA3 is the acronym they use, and it's at Cal IT2 at UCSD, Center for Interdisciplinary, I don't have my note up here, but art, archaeology, and architecture, I know that part, and science. Thank you again for having us. I'll be back in the morning with another speaker, Evan Schumacher, who spoke at our very first meeting of the Minds last June. And the rest of your program will be happening in about 15 minutes. So enjoy your dinner, and I hope you have a great night.